Thanks for joining us for the Hypnotist Mastermind, the Stage Hypnotist Mastermind. And I'm really excited. This is our first meeting, and we have a man that I really respect a lot, a colleague who I think is just a great human being. Grant Saunders is with us today. We're going to talk with Grant about his career in stage hypnotism, and he's going to tell you his deepest, darkest secrets. It's going to be great. Grant, how are you doing?
Be careful what you wish for. I am an oversharer.
Hey, it's funny because I've been on your your series twice now, and we've talked, and I always love talking with you, but I've never actually heard you tell me about, like, what were you doing before you got into stage hypnotism?
It was a weird one for me, because hypnosis was something I didn't want to get into. My mum was a therapist and very woo-woo. And so it was never an angle I wanted to go down. Left home very early and was a grafter, a hustler, and tried my hand at lots of different things. Ended up getting into the entertainment industry, and I was very lucky that I ended up with a couple of nightclubs at a very early-ish age. But I never had any ambitions of going into the stage, and the hypnosis was always a hobby thing for me. So there's nothing more interesting than when you're kind of backstage on tour with a couple of artists where you can show them some stuff. And I used to have loads of fun with it when I didn't have to be professional. And then I had like a moment in the days of the clubs where, I'm being brutally honest, I was drinking too much, I was partying too much, I got caught up in the lifestyle too much, and I thought I need to break away from this. And I kind of thought the only things I know how to do is to I know about entertainment, but I was never keen being the centre of attention. I was always the booker, the introducer, I was always behind the scenes of it. But I kind of thought, I know hypnosis, so that's kind of the route I started, kind of doing the whole, fat middle-aged women that want to eat chocolate and still lose weight, quit smoking, confidence, that type of stuff. But it really didn't connect with me, and it did feel a bit off. But in order to get clients, I knew I had to kind of do talks, and doing talks was what made me uncomfortable. And so I started doing a couple of demonstrations in order to kind of fill my diary up a little bit. And then I was asked at one of those if I would do a charity show. And I got it all wrong. But I'm like, do you know what? Yeah, let's do it. And I remember that feeling just before, I say going on stage, it wasn't really a stage. It was a pool table at the back of a biker bar. And I've got a pinstripe suit on with a big footballer's white knot tie. So, I thought I looked the dog's danglies. But then when you walk into a biker's bar, everything was wrong about it. But there was a moment when I went from being like, please let me get run over by a car, I don't really want to speak, to like, we're all performers. There's that feeling when the audience is just there. And you just kind of, that flow moment then, I kind of thought that's amazing. And doing demonstrations for the therapy side of things never got me that. And that was, especially coming from someone that had some success, and had parted a little bit, that kind of scratched that itch as well. And it's the adrenaline, the kind of the feelings and the emotions that came with that. And from then on, I kind of chased that feeling. And very shortly after that, I kind of turned my back completely on therapy and just went, kind of knees deep into the performance side of things, especially here in the UK, because at that time, stage hypnosis had almost been completely banished. It had a terrible reputation. In the news, everyone was saying how terrible it was, which for me, I kind of saw that as that's a great time to really go all in on it, because no one was really doing much. So it made it easier for me to kind of stick my head above the parapet a little bit, and just kind of made loads of mistakes, because luckily Facebook wasn't around then. And yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I must admit, it's like I would hate to be starting now making the mistakes I made then, with Facebook, Instagram, and mobile phones everywhere. So yeah, so that was my start into stage hypnosis, and absolutely loved it.
So it sounds like you're saying, if I heard you right, that initially it was sort of a lead generation tactic, right?
Oh,
Because you were
absolutely,
looking to generate clients and stuff. But
absolutely.
when you got to that point where you really decided to let that client work really drop off and really go all in. Can you put your finger on like what was the real appeal of it that made you go, I would so much rather do this than this? Like, what was that all about?
For me, doing therapy, because it was something my mum did and it's something I never wanted to really do. Don't get me wrong, the techniques from kind of hypnosis and therapy helped me out in business and enabled me to get those clubs. But when I turned my back on that and went into the therapy, I was doing it for the money. When I went on stage and the audience was kind of eating out the palm of your hand, that filled the and this is like a therapy session, it filled that void inside of me that for years previously I was filling with, drink, partying and everything else. So for me, I came off stage and that made me feel kind of whole. And so there was a love of it, and it's like, wow, that's okay. The acceptance and the approval of the audience was kind of like, yes, I need that applause. So yeah, so that moment, literally, when I've come off that stage, I was like, this is what I want to do. I would to this day, I would do it for free. They pay me for the traveling. The actual show, when it goes brilliantly, there's no better feeling, and that makes me shallow. I don't care. It's lovely to have that energy from the audience feeding you rather than taking it away.
How many years ago was that?
I always say 15 years, but I think I've been saying 15 years for about the last 5 or 10 years. So yeah, I think it was 2000-ish, 2002, 2003 when I kind of went into stage hypnosis full on.
And so now you've put in all that time. Has it changed at all for you? Like when you think about the juice of it, like is there any difference, or is it just as much of like that charged feeling today as it was then?
I still go through the same process. Like literally before I go on stage, like if you could give me a pill that says take this pill, you will have a very horrific, painful heart attack, I'll go, yeah, give it here, I'll take it. Before I go on stage, my anxiety, my nerves, everything is just unbelievable. But I've kind of learned to love that feeling, because when the intro music starts and I go out, and you still don't know. And they say like you do your reps, you understand it, but you still don't know. You still see the person sat in the audience like that, that's talking to the mate that's not interested. So that's what I love about it. I love that it's kind of like you can go out there and you don't know how that show's going to go. You can be brilliant, you can die on your ass, and you've got to be 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes into a show before you can relax a little bit and then kind of work with them. And I like that. I like the rush that gives me.
That's cool. You've had your time, you're still doing it. Again, reflectively, when you look back at all those mistakes you made in the early years and where you're at now, what do you credit with why you've done as well as you have done? What's the thing you're willing to like sort of pat yourself on the back and say, I have this quality or this skill or this thing that I know this is a big part of why I've done well?
I have this amazing ability to tap into people's kind of low values, low expectations. No, I'm kidding. I just lowball all their expectations. No, I'm always trying to improve. I'm very self-critical. So even when you do the show and it's like, it's not your fault, it's the audience's fault, it's not this. I'm always self-critical. So I always want to make it better, smoother. But the reality, I think a lot of it is down to persistence. It's a case of, if somebody contacts me, a booker, if any of my friends try to ring me, I'm known for not answering my phone. But if a booker rings me or sends me an email, I'm on the phone straight away. Because if I send someone an email, I want that contact straight back. I don't want to wait until they've finished their job packing shelves at Tesco's or whatever supermarket it is, and then maybe get back to them after they spoke to the wife and had the tea and done all that lot. I want the person that they send an email and then straight away they get a response. Hi, this is Grant. You've just sent me an email about this. I just thought we'd kind of make a connection. And I think that for me is the important thing. In the early days when I was crap and insecure about my show, I knew from the entertainment side of things, I knew from running my own business, from having nightclubs, from having shows, from having those things, I knew the most important thing in business is building relationships. If I can build a relationship, if you book me for a show and we get on really well. And at the night of the show, we get on really well. And after the show, no matter how that show has gone, even if it's an absolutely terrible show, we can still have that rapport. We can laugh and joke about it, because that's when it's difficult. It's difficult as if you've done a bad show, you're almost embarrassed about it and you want to hide away from the booker. But you've kind of got to talk about the elephant in the room and go, well, that didn't work. Bear in mind, that doesn't happen too often now. But it's about building that relationship so that then they kind of go, do you know what though? He's a nice guy, he's professional, and his show's okay. I'll give him another chance. And for me, that's how it's always been. It's about building that relationship with that booker. There's an example of a guy that I knew that booked shows, who had a venue that I wanted to work. And I'm not lying if I say 5 years I worked on him before I got that booking. 5 years. Always sending him happy birthday messages, always kind of not being creepy with it, but just always being there on that radar, building that relationship with him. Yeah, not like knocking on his door in the middle of the night. So I think the important thing for sex is building those relationships and being persistent. After your bad show, and I've seen loads of guys come into this industry, shout from the rooftops because they've trained with X, Y, and Z, and they're unstoppable, they're better than everybody else, and everything's wonderful. And then they have a bad show, and then they have another bad show, and it chips away at your insecurities. No matter how much ego you've got, having those shows chips away. And if you put it onto the bad shows, onto the other people, you've not got that foundation or that support network in order to get through that. And there's loads of guys that have just stopped because they just can't cope with that, the challenges that you have in the beginning, the failures that you've got to have. There's such, and I get on my soapbox about this, there's such a rush to be in big theatres, to be on cruise ships, to be on TV. And it's like, do you know what? Do some shit shows first. Get in there, learn it a little bit, see the mistakes that's going to happen. You know, forget to tie your shoelaces and trip up on stage. Do all this stuff first. And then when you get comfortable, then stretch yourself again. When your show starts to feel a bit like, this is a bit rote, is this now? I could do this in my sleep. Then stretch yourself. Don't rush to be on TV. Don't rush to be a star, because if you've not built that foundation, I think that's where the issues, and there is exceptions to that, but you've kind of got to have that foundation.
I totally get that. I had a student who I trained him when he was 18, and he was amazing. He had started doing magic when he was 11. Then he started doing mentalism when he was 14. Then he wanted to add hypnotism, and he came to me when he was 17. And I started when he was 17, and we did it little at a time. We got him when he was 18, was when he was done. He went and he got on America's Got Talent, got 4 yeses from the judges. Everything was looking great. And then the producers, after the fact, changed their mind and cut him. And he didn't perform after that. Like, he just didn't know. He was so used to everything he had done had worked and had gone well. When he was 18, he four-walled at an independent theater in Massachusetts in the summertime and sold it out at 18 years. You know, like, I was like, kid, you're killing. And then he went and thought everything was going great, right? Simon Cowell and Tyra Banks, and they were like, yes, yes, yes. And then they called him 2 weeks afterward. And they're like, sorry, we changed our mind. And he just kind of crumbled from it. And
that's the thing with this industry. It's like, you know, one night you can be, you know, in Dubai performing an amazing show. And then 2 days later, you can be in a dive bar performing a terrible show. And literally that's happened. I remember being sat in a changing room with a load of broken chairs and broken fruit. I don't know if you know what fruit machines are. They're like the gambling one-arm bandits. Broken one-arm bandits and broken stools. And literally thinking, like, I was in Dubai a couple of days ago. Like, but these people don't care about that. This was Barnsley in South Yorkshire. This was an old mining town that all the mines had closed down and everybody was out of work. It was a shithole. But they had budget and they were paying for a show, so I had to do a show. I remember going out and there was like 3 people volunteering. And I'm like, what do you do? And it's, if you've not got that foundation, you don't appreciate the amazing shows. You just think that's just normal. And 2, when you do get that knock, you know, you just got to You got to roll with the punches.
Yeah. Hey, let's open it up. Anything that anyone's heard you want to follow up, have questions for Grant, let's do that now, and we'll get into that portion of our segment here. Who's got a question for Grant?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, do it.
Well, I'm pretty new to all this. I've not done a show yet. But I'm looking to doing some small local ones, just to do what you say, get out there and just have a practice and things like that. Would you recommend putting myself out there in a place where I know it's going to fall on its arse?
There's people out there that say you kind of got to go, minimum this amount of people, minimum that, minimum this. Do what you're comfortable with, and especially if you're new to it, you want to make it as easy as possible for you to get some wins. Those first couple of shows, invite your friends and family. Invite the people that if you've done some messing around, some impromptu hypnosis at parties and stuff, invite those people along. If you're going to do your first show, for me, make it a charity show. Because at a charity show, one that means something to you as well, not just, I hate there's loads of charities that just want free entertainment. Don't be one of those, but give them a show. And because the wheels are already greased, because you're doing a great thing, people are on your side already. So yeah, don't put yourself into those challenging situations to start with, because that is like a baptism of fire. All that stuff is there from the people that have done it beforehand to kind of go, yes, you do kind of want this amount of minimum number. You don't need that, but it's just about making life easy for yourself sometimes. The most important thing is to just start, just kind of do it, and don't worry too much about it until it happens. And then you come out the other side and you're like, oh, that was actually not as bad as what I thought. And that's it. The more shows you do, you'll then see those challenges and kind of go, all right, this is how I dealt with that last time. This is how I can deal with it this time. But it sounds like you're from the Midlands. So cause you guys are like 20% funnier anyway, because you've got that Midlands accent, so it always kind of works. So we're the best comedians in this country. You've got to have a regional accent. If I work in Yorkshire, I'm not funny because I just sound like I'm a Mancunian, and the Yorkshire people don't like us Manchester folk. But the further down south I go, the funnier I get. So because you've got a good Midlands accent, you will do really well. And that sounds silly, but it means so much.
Thank you.
Cool. That's cool. I hadn't thought of that. You think about, like, in America, comedy, right? Like, a lot of the people who have distinct accents, it's like they get a little boost just from, yeah. Cool. Who else has a question? It's okay if you don't. It's all right. Now, but I just thought, we've got Grant here. He's been kind with his time. And
talking on the accents thing as well, I see Tony Charles, the gentleman hypnotist, is here as well. He's another great example of that. When you talk about you've got to make things as easy as possible in order for the hypnosis to work in their mind as well. Tony, I think, has one of the best kind of the tone of his voice is so hypnotic. It is unbelievable. So, and he's just recently done his first theatre show as well. So well done on that, Tony. It looked amazing.
That's cool. What a compliment. That's great. That's awesome.
Thank you for that, Grant. Yeah, it was interesting. It really was interesting. But this voice doesn't come about by accident. It's the late nights, it's the Bacardi, it's the early mornings. It's a full-time job. That's all I can say.
He's really worked at it. That's nice.
Exactly.
So he's paid his dues working on the voice. That's awesome.
Do you know what? That's such an important thing. As a northerner in England and a bit of a chancer, I talk fast. And even though I understand me, and people in kind of northern England can understand me, whenever I've travelled, I have to consciously slow down. So if I'm doing cruise ships, I've really got to slow that down because, especially if it is an American audience, I've really got to slow it down. Like 2 syllables, that's no more. No, I'm only kidding. But it's something you've got to be consciously aware of, especially if you've got a strong accent, is to really kind of, allow it to sink in. And to me, I feel like I'm talking really slow sometimes, but you need that for the audience.
if I can say as well, because I deal with the stammer, and going on stage sometimes it can heighten the anxiety, but you can control it. So one of the wonderful ways I think of slowing down, because that's what I do, is I make myself forcefully slow down. And when I went to speech therapy when I was 15, 16, they put a set of headphones on with a microphone, and they got you to read a passage out of a book. As you spoke, your voice came in your ear a quarter of a second or an eighth of a second later. And I think if you want to look at slowing yourself down and actually focusing on slowing yourself down, try looking at some of the techniques that people who use stammer control techniques use, and that may help. But sometimes I think when you're using your own voice and your own passion, that in itself can be a hypnotic effect. I'm assuming, I don't know. Because when you hear some people, they're rattling the induction, they're rattling this, they're rattling, and the people are going, so again, but if you purposely want to slow down your voice, seriously, have a look at techniques for people who have a stammer, and you'll naturally slow yourself down.
Very well done, Tony. Love that.
Any other questions for Grant? No.
Oh, look at that. Nice and easy.
He's explained everything so well. They're all just ready to go. All right. Well, thank you, Grant, for sharing all of that with us. And I really appreciate it.